And it looks like we're live. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, based on when you're going to see the broadcast. Today, we've got my very special guest, my business partner, my longtime friend, my family, brother from another mother, Long Doan, is with us today for the next episode of My American Dream / Reality Story. Long, how's it going today?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to be here. Like you said, we've been together, almost 15 years now?
Oh, it's been a while.
So, I talked to you. I think some people asked a couple times already, how often you talk to your partner. I look up one time between calls and texts about 40 times a day. So I probably talk to you more than my wife and my other family members.
I think so. That's funny because same thing. Every time I turn around and the phone rings, it's going to either be you or one of the other business partners, but we talk often. So Long, I'm glad that you're joining us today. And as you know, this broadcast that we're doing here is really kind of exploring the American dream and what the American dream means for me, for what it means for you, for what it means for our guest, and sort of our reality around how we built the American dream story for ourselves, and then how that has helped us empower others and their American dream story.
Yeah, I love this podcast that you're going to be doing and with lots of cool guests coming on, because the American dream, it's getting harder and harder.
It is.
For people to achieve. So I love that you're calling it the American reality, because your guest is going to share how they, have achieved the American dream and continue to live the American dream as a reality.
It doesn't, to me, it seems that it takes perseverance now to achieve that dream, right? So when you think about the American dream, you think about the white picket fence, the 2.2 kids, and the prosperity, right? Now it seems like people really have to overcome to achieve. There's a lot of obstacles. I was talking to somebody not that long ago that took them 8 or 9 years, they said, just to save up the down payment for their first house. And that might sound crazy to those that know about, real estate finance, considering you don't need a ton of money to purchase your first home or your home, right? But when you think about the moving cost, the furniture, everything that goes into it, between the down payment and just the cost of acquisition, 8 or 9 years it took this individual as a single mom. So when you think about the American dream and what it means to everybody, it's, for me now, I'm seeing about the perseverance that it takes in order to get there.
Yeah, and I know, all your guests are going to be on this show is going to share their American reality, because we all have different backgrounns. I know today, you're supposed to be interviewing me about my story, but, you and I have been together for almost 15 years. Realty Group, we're known as when people zig, we zag. When the market gets tough, people cut costs, we double down. When people retreat, we advance, right?
Right.
So I'm going to flip the script on you today, man. I get to share my story many times already. I would love to flip the script on the audience today. You guys going to be in for a treat. I would want to interview you and hear about your story, because we don't hear enough about your story. And I think your story, because I know you, is pretty inspiring for people, because at the end of the day, Mike, I believe it's first, before we go into it, I want you to kind of share also about where we are today as Realty Group and who we are, because we're partners. I want to hear more about you sharing that. And then I want you to actually share your story, how you got to this point once we start, reverse engineer this thing.
Right.
So, tell us a little bit about, I'm going to take this hosting away from you. I'm going to be the host today. So tell a little bit about, who we are and Realty Group and all this stuff.
It's funny because when you think Realty Group, it sounds like such a generic name, for a real estate company. And yet our generic name has led to such a legacy brand, and not just in the local market, but nationally. There's so many people that know us. There's so many people we collaborate with in the real estate space. And, I think back about how we got started compared to where we are today. And today, by the way, is pretty fascinating. As an independent company, not a franchise, but an independent company. When you look at true independence, we're in the top. What was the last number that we're at, for 52 or something nationally?
Yep, there are about over 106,000 real estate brokers, according to NAR.
Yeah.
We are the top 150 overall, number 148, but we're number 52 overall as an independent owner.
And what that means for everybody watching is, so when you think independent versus franchise, so there's a lot of companies out there, RE/MAX, Keller Williams. There's a corporate, and they finance all these other companies into their franchises. So you'll get, RE/MAX Advantage Plus. You'll get RE/MAX Results, right? You'll get Keller Williams Classic and all these different brands. And there's nothing wrong with franchise. Just talk about like a consolidation of a conglomerate, right? With independence, it's one company, right? One company, one real estate company. So when you think about overall, in the top 150 of all the real estate companies in the country, and when you look at independence, number 52, right? Now, you know us, we're still not satisfied with that, right? We're still going to go, no, we got a lot more room to grow. But, you know, one of the things that's been special about us is how this has sort of happened outside of our control. What we learned, you know, now is we like to begin with the end in mind. We like to plan something and execute. How we got started was the exact opposite. We just sort of fell into this thing, you and I. And, you know, as we were working together, not in ownership, not in partnership, but working together, we developed sort of a cool, I guess you'd say, rhythm or niche. You know, you were working a lot with a bank-owned REO. For those that don't know what that is, that's the bank-owned foreclosure inventory. If you remember back in 2008, 9, 10, the REO was off the chain, right? Well, Long here ends up having all this opportunity because you were listing, what was it, like 200, 300 homes in your inventory at one time. And guess what happened? Before the internet was a big thing, it was there, but it wasn't a big thing like it is today. All the buyers out there were picking up the phone and calling you because they had interest in these cheap and affordable homes. And, you know, you being one person at the time, there's no way you're keeping up with that. So, you know, Long and I ended up partnering because I was working with a lot of buyer leads, you call them, because that's really what the sign call is leads. I was working with a lot of them, and we got connected with Long, and Long tells me he's got 900 phone calls a month coming in on these bank-owned properties. Well, first off, as a poker player, I'm like, Long, I don't believe you. I'm calling your bluff. He shows me his CRM, his software that showed all the calls coming in. And there's 900 a month coming in there. And I don't know if you remember what I said to you. I said, what are you doing with these calls? Long says to me, well, I'm talking to you. And, you know, and we described it then as really kind of like a swimming pool of opportunity that you dumped into a Dixie cup. And all that opportunity was just lost, right? So I came over, we built along with Jessica too, now my ex-wife, my wife at the time. We come over and immediately start building a team around these buyer leads, and it took off really well. Well, like everything else in life, everything changes, right? Nothing stays the same. So one certainty of life. The bank-owned inventory started drying up, maybe a year and a half after we got started. And your inventory was going down, the whole country was going down. And Long and I sat in the office one day and twiddling our thumbs going, what are we going to do next? I mean, do we go our separate ways? Do we form something else? And I can't remember which one of us said it, but, well, maybe we should just do like a traditional real estate brokerage. I didn't want to go back and just, be on my own again, and kind of got used to the team environment. So we decided to do something together. And the conversation, I'll never forget the little office we had in Champlin, Minnesota at the time, the conference room. And we tried to really figure out, what's our model going to be? Who are we going to be as a company? Man, were we green, because the ideas we had that it was so vague and, no direction. It was so generalized. I can't believe we even thought of anything at that point that worked, but we had no idea where we're heading, right? We just said, well, I kind of know what we were going to charge agents, and, well, we're kind of good at this real estate thing. Maybe we'll teach others to be good at it. That's all we had. There was nothing more. And throughout the years now, we've grown not just a real estate brokerage, but an amazing title company. We've acquired a property management company. We've got a construction company that in our fold. We've got, how do you know how many other companies, investment companies, you name it. We're working with everything. And it all sort of just happened, not to us, but in spite of us, I guess you call it,
Yeah, and I think you're totally right. I think that's what pretty much explain me and you and Realty Group, right?
Yeah.
Is when we see challenges, we see opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge back in 2008, 9, and 10 was the foreclosures.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then we see it as opportunity. So we did a lot of bank-owned listings. And then, we have all these buyers call coming in. That was a challenge. I don't know what to do with them. Well, I see it as an opportunity. And then there came you, and then those things went away and the market got a little bit better. And we're like, all right, now what? That's a challenge, that inventory is gone for our company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we see it as an opportunity. So what can we do? And we look at, all the different models out there, and we see that they're all really good, but we also realizing it's all about alignment.
Mm-hmm.
What company best aligned with the right agents who want to come and grow together?
And which company or what model is going to align with our own values?
That's right.
What do we believe?
Yep.
Who are we as people, and what are we bringing into the marketplace? We had to figure that out. We didn't know at the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's just keep rolling with that. Share with the viewer today Realty Group values and core values. What are they, and what's Realty Group all about?
Well, I think, when you really think about values, we all have things that we aspire to, right? In terms of values, right? So I aspire to be kind. I love to be kind all the time. Is that one of my core values? No, because I'm not kind all the time. One of the values I'd say that's core to me and to us at Realty Group is integrity. And sometimes to be integritous, like to have integrity, might mean that you're not going to be kind in those situations, right? But the core values, that's the non-negotiable. We're going to do what's right, not what's easy, all the time. Non-negotiable, right? Even if it costs us money or hurts us in the long run, we've got to practice that core value. So that's one thing I think we've done really well. And this goes back, my personal belief and my personal backstory. I know we're going to get into that, but how those values really kind of dictate your behavior and then dictate your outcomes, right? This is one thing we've learned how to, nobody has a crystal ball, but you can almost, pre-prescribe your outcomes when you know what your values are, because you know what's going to happen. You know what your behavior is going to bring forth. It's not an accident then. We didn't have that foresight early on, but I think we understand that much better. So integrity is one of our core values, and so is empowerment. Probably one of my favorites of that is empowerment, right? And that's one thing we believe strongly in Realty Group, that our agents, right, they've got their own hopes and dreams, right? Our consumers, our buyers and sellers, they've got their hopes and dreams. And in the middle of that, that's where they come together. Our agents are fulfilling their hopes and dreams by empowering those to fulfill their hopes and dreams. And that's to our third, maybe even more important core value, is purpose. Why do we do what we do, right? So what we do is important. We saw real estate, right? But why do we do what we do? And then how do we behave and practice that? That's what we've been really hyper focused on. As our business has matured and as business leadership we've matured, that's really our areas of focus. And we can kind of draw back on that with your life story, my life story. Those values that are so core is what brought us behavior-wise and outcome-wise to where we're at today.
Yeah, and you're totally right, because we are in the people business, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. For all the people listening out there, I'm sure most of them are in some type of business, most likely, or they're part of a team. So we're always in the people business, and it's important that we have the right culture where we belong to, where we're at. And culture might happen either by design or by default.
One of the two.
So if you
Usually
don't
by
have,
default.
that's right. So because of who's here, this is the culture, and that person or that team left, the next group of people come in, that's the culture. That's by default, right? By design is if the leadership team can actually create this, all the core value you explained. By the way, that's purpose, integrity, and empower.
Yes.
Give credit to a managing broker, Brian Durham. He came up with the acronym PIE, right? The American piece of pie.
Right.
So that's by design at Realty Group. So and I think that gives the reason why we align with certain type of agent, and we are where we are today because of those core values. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, because again, it's one thing to have a core value that's a bumper sticker that sits on your wall that nobody pays attention to. And that's 99.9% of corporations have their core values, but that's all it is a bumper sticker. They don't practice it. What makes a value true and real and tangible is how do we actually practice this in behavior? And then if we do that, can we pretty much predict our outcomes based on those behaviors? Because like anything else, it's about consistency, right? So if I don't practice my values, then they're really not core. But once they become core and I'm practicing them all the time, then as we call them SOPs, right? Our standard operating procedures, those are built off those values. The way that we hire, the way that we train, the way that we, use conflict management and risk management, the way, even from a simpler perspective, showing a home as an agent, listing a home, all of those SOPs are going to have your values baked into them, how you do those things. That's what I mean about, being able to predict the outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we are proud, of course, of Realty Group, and you're right, we're not satisfied. We'll continue to grow, because at the end of the day, it's not about us.
No.
It's about the people who are with us. We're always going to, stewardship, right, lead them in the direction that help them keep growing as people. And I think of this analogy a lot. It's like, you see this iceberg, because we're Minnesota, right? So we're like in the cold area. This iceberg, you don't see the tip of the iceberg. That's right.
In August, iceberg.
The little iceberg above the water. You only see the tip usually.
Yeah.
But we don't see this whole massive thing on the bottom, that all the things you have to go through to see this iceberg at the tip. Or the another analogies I like to see is called Minnesota. Minnesota. Again, the ducks, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of ducks here. So you see these ducks are just floating majestically on the pond of one of our 12,000 lakes.
Right.
And they don't realize the duck is actually like paddling like crazy underneath
Yeah.
to continue to move majestically. Well, what people don't realize where we are today is because of where we went through our past.
Mhm.
So I know, man, you hate sharing your story. You're uncomfortable doing it, but I believe it's very inspiring. And I'm going to really push today for you to share your story today. So, I mean, let's go back a little bit let's go back a little bit from now to just earlier to further and further back. So share with me, how long have you been in real estate? How did you start in real estate?
Well, it's funny because like when I started partnering with you or when I started working with you, I literally fell into it, right? And I think that's a story that's a common story for a lot of people in real estate. It's sort of the misfits that can't fit in other places, right? They don't fit well with corporate. They don't really work for other people that well. They're not really true business owners. They're like solopreneurs, like solo, Wolfpack of one, right? So a lot of people fall into real estate that way, and I did too. So many, many moons ago, when I was a young man, I started working at 14 years old. I got my first job. And what I realized very early on, and by the way, hated school. You know, I didn't like, every day I had to get up. And it's funny because we're talking August, right? And state fair time. To this day, I still get anxiety about first day of school. It's built into me, right? I just feel uncomfortable. Like, oh man, the summer's ending and first day of school. So here's me coming from a family with, you know, I guess you'd say a very modest means. We didn't have a lot. We were pretty broke, right? I mean, never wasn't digging out of dumpsters to eat, but we were struggling. So, you know, I go to work so I can start earning some extra money. At the time, I think I was making $4.25 an hour, right? I'll never forget my first day. I was working at a car wash. And my first day, I was miserable within the first 10 minutes. I hated it. It gets to be 10 in the morning and somebody called a break. And I thought we were done for the day, right? I thought all 8 hours went by. And I go, I'll see you tomorrow. Well, hey, son, where are you going? You know, why aren't we done? No, it's just break time. I'm like, oh, how does this work? So the next day I had to come back. And I, again, hated it, hated school, hated working. I made it, I want to say, about a year at that job, quit. Went to my next job, McDonald's. First day came back just smelling like grease. You could pick the grease off me, right? Hated that job. I think I made it 6 months there. And one thing I was starting to trend pretty regularly was I was bombing out of school and I was bombing out of work. Like my performance was terrible. You know, little do you know that probably makes the best real estate agents the ones that can't work well with others, right? Or for others, I should say. So I kept bouncing from job to job to job. And when growing up, my example, because we all have examples, people that, you know, whether it's your parents or older brother and mentor, right? Well, my father mentored me in a way about work. And he didn't set out to, he wasn't like sitting me down saying, son, let me teach you about work. It didn't happen that way. It was by example, right? The man went to a job that he hated. Now, a little backstory on him in the quick 30 seconds. At 26 years old, he had 3 kids with a woman, love of his life, died unexpectedly. So 26 years old, you find yourself back in that era. He was a depression-born kid, you know, born in 32. And I mean, this is probably in the 50s. But back in the era, you know, you find yourself with 3 kids. You're the man of the house. You got to go to work. Nobody to watch your kids. So he ends up marrying a woman that's, I mean, I got to be careful what I say here, but it's psychotic. I mean, it's really, really a bad deal. That happens. He has another child with her. That blows up terribly because, well, I mean, again, violence and psychosis, right? So leaves that woman, ends up with my mother. I'm the only kid from that set of parents. So he had 3 kids with his first marriage, 1 with his second. Now I'm number 5, right? Poor household. When I say poor, I mean, not a lot of money. I see this man go to a job every single day that he hates. Losses. I mean, you mentioned depression around losing the love of your life, having these kids, getting into another marriage. It's a terrible marriage. And then now you're with another woman with another kid, going to work every single day, hating what you do. But I watch a man get up every day, go to work, come home at night, exhausted, miserable. And, you know, like a lot of people in that era and probably today, he developed a pretty heavy drinking problem. So he's either, you know, a functional alcoholic, go to work. And that's not the lesson I learned from him, by the way. It was the work ethic, right? I'd watch this guy, you know, hate it, but go and put a roof over my head and the rest of the family, took care of everything. The guy took care of everything. So here's me at 14, bombing out of school, bombing out of work. By the time I'm 18, 19, I was lost, like literally lost. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. People would ask me that question. What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? I'm like, couch surf. Like I have no plans. Like I was completely lost how I was going to support myself or one day have my own family. But I kept bouncing from blue collar job to blue collar job. And I did find one that I liked. I like to drive. I don't know what it is, but I like to drive. Maybe that's one of the reasons I got into real estate, right? I drove a lot. So I drove for a Ford company delivering auto parts. And I was driving all over Wisconsin, all over Minnesota, barely earning enough money that I was still living at home to even support myself. And I was dating at the time, again, my ex-wife, but she was my high school sweetheart, right? Dating her, who was a straight A student, graduating college and high school at the same time. You know, look, I got people here. They're passing me water. Kind of a big deal. And so she's graduating high school at the same time as college. At this time, she's about 19 years old, and she went into law. And she was working for a law firm with a lot of younger attorneys, successful 25, 26, 27-year-old hotshot attorneys that, well, tell you what, she was a very good-looking 19-year-old. Every one of them wanted to hook up with her. And what are they going to do? These are attorneys. They're negotiators. They're people that poke at things, right? They figure out what the weak spots are. So tell me about your boyfriend. What's his future? Like, you know, who are you with? And man, they wrote her hard about what a loser I was. You know, you could do so much better. So that's one thing I've got a lot of is I wouldn't say pride, but, you know, I rise to a challenge. Somebody challenged me like that and said, well, screw that. I'm not going to be that guy. I got to find something respectable. You know, I want to do something respectable. So I thought, I hate working. Maybe I need to just change the type of job that I'm going to do. So I started looking through the white pages, living at home, and I'm flipping through, and there's an ad for Edina Realty. I knew nothing about real estate. I never sold a thing in my life, by the way. Never owned a home. I was at the time 21. Okay, never owned a home. So I responded to the ad. I happened to look out the window of my house, and sure enough, there's this Edina Realty where the ad's from, a block and a half away. So I go down there unannounced, no appointment. The office manager just happened to be there. Imagine that today. Walk in the office and actually see someone there, right? So I sat down with him, so young. I mean, I must have looked like I was 14. And he took the time with me. And Joe Benson, he's still in the industry today. He took the time with me and sat down and interviewed me. And I asked him, I said, what is this job? Well, you're selling real estate. I went to get up. I said, oh, not for me. He goes, oh, wait a second. Now, Joe is a really, really old school, successful recruiter. Like, the man was really good at recruiting. Everybody in the industry knows that. I didn't know at the time. I never met him, right? But the weird thing was, he came to my high school when I was in 10th grade and did some sort of presentation on real estate. I'll never forget, my face was down on the desk. I slept through every class. You know, I just remember this guy poking me and trying to hand me info. I'm like, get out of here. There's a guy in front of me. Well, he shows me the MLS at the time. And the MLS had numbers on there. Like, here's the sale price. Here's what the house sells for. But here's how you get compensated. And he shows me this 2.7 or 3.15, you know, number, whatever it was, that the buyer's broker or the listing broker, buyer's broker compensation was. He said, yeah, the guy that sold this house just made $27,000. Is that on one deal? One house? Yeah. I go, how many did he sell this year? The one? He said, no. I think he's sold 18, 19 this year. Or maybe more. And I started doing the math in my head, and I'm like, that is a lot of money. How do you get that job? Do you have to go to college? No, you take a class, 3 weeks later, you're licensed. How much does it cost? Less than $1,000, all in, all the fees you got to pay. So I said, let me get this straight. I can make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing something respectable. Remember, that was why I was there in the first place. And it's only going to take me 3 weeks and less than $1,000. That was a Friday afternoon, by the way. Monday morning, he sat there. This is how good of a recruiter he was. He sat there and got me signed up online. I was in school Monday morning. I didn't get a chance to talk to my family about it. My girlfriend at the time, nothing. Just, I'm going to real estate school. Well, nobody warned me on this, but, you know, again, I bombed out of school. I graduated late. I think it was a D- average. Like, you know, I've been to high school for 4.5 years. I'm no dummy here, right? So that's kind of how it was. I mean, I think I graduated almost a full year late. So anyway, halfway through the first week, they call it course one. Back in the day, if you didn't do Zoom, you showed up in person. And I went to, and at the time I was dating Jessica for 7 years. I went to call her. I couldn't remember her phone number. This is before we had saved, cell phones, right? So I couldn't remember her phone number. I literally had to ask my mom, what's Jessica's phone number? Because the information was crammed. But for the first time in my life, I was paying attention. That was the difference. Like, I actually wanted to learn this stuff, and I was hooked on it. I mean, I could tell you to this day, I could tell you the number of square feet in an acre. I could literally tell you all the stuff that I learned that you just don't even use in real estate, but it's the book, how you pass the test. So I get through that. And my first weekend after being licensed, I was at an open house, and I didn't even know how to host an open. Nobody taught me how to host an open house. I didn't even have a sign in front of the house. Like, I had 5 or 6 signs that they gave me, but there's a panel sign for sale sign. I thought that was the sign. Like, I'll put all this other signs out there. They'll know it's this house. I was watching people circle the cul-de-sac and leave. One person came in. Hey, is this the house that's open? And remember, back then it wasn't internet, right? It was literally you open up a newspaper. So I saw them matching the address to the paper, and they walk in. I don't know how I did it, but I got this guy as a buyer. And my first weekend, all of a sudden somebody wants to work with me. Well, that lasted for about 3 weeks, and they fired me. Right? They're like, "Yeah, you're too young and don't know what you're doing." But I got to write an offer. I thought that was pretty cool. But a family friend then, as soon as I was unemployed again, a family friend reached out and said, "I'm thinking of buying a house." It was at the time my best friend's aunt, and so here I'm on the track again. I'm out showing houses. We find her one. I go to write the offer, and the listing agent had to basically help me write the offer. I didn't know what I was. I mean, they could have taken such advantage of me. We got the deal. Couldn't believe it. We got the deal. Well, at the closing, and by the way, this is the time. It was a pretty hot market. There was, I think, 4 or 5 offers total. I'm in a living room with an offer that somebody else helped me write, the listing agent himself, and I'm waiting to present this offer in person.
In person.
Yeah, to the seller. I'm just sitting here like, what do I do? I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I sat there and I went through it, and the listing agent coached me through it at the table with his own seller. I got that deal, but I'll never forget this as long as I live. At the closing table, we sat there in at the part where the closer steps out and they make copies. The buyer kind of breaks down in tears. And I go, "Shit, what did I do? Sorry. Whatever I did, I'm sorry." He goes, No. Listen, I never thought I'd be able to buy a house again. I had a foreclosure many, many years ago. I never thought I'd be able to buy. The only reason I'm talking to you is because you're too dumb to know the difference. I didn't think anybody would help me. And somehow every obstacle that came up in this thing, you got us through. I don't even know how you did that. But what hit me at that moment, and why I was terrible at working before, you get done on a Friday, someone slaps you in the back. Good job. We'll see you next week. Nobody cared, right? What you did had no real impact. But all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had impact. What I did mattered for the first time in my life. And, from feeling like a complete failure, watching my dad and his work ethic, and thinking I was destined to just be a nothing. In one moment, it flipped and I was hooked. And from that point on, I think I did 9, 10 transactions my first year. Again, at 21 years old. I didn't know that was good, right? In fact, I see other people doing 18, 19, 20 deals. I thought, I suck at this, and they're like, you're 21 years old. You just did 9 deals. Calm down, right? You're doing good. Within 2 years, now I'm doing 20, 25 transactions a year. And I'm grossing. I think it was my third, I'm in my third year. I grossed $108,000 at 23 years old. And the following year, and this is one thing I learned about business early on, is I had to keep reinvesting the money that I was making in the business. And I was figuring out how to grow that, like how to get a bigger client base. Nobody taught me this stuff. I had to figure it out, right? But I had a knack for it. I started growing and scaling the business, and that 108 turned into 250,000 overnight. Now I'm not even 25 years old yet. I barely graduated high school. Had a serious internal complex about my work ethic. I thought it was gonna be nothing. And ended up marrying Jessica, by the way. Here I am making $250,000 a year for the first time with purpose, passion, and a reason I fell in love with it. I was working night and day, and I learned how to integrate what I did in real estate into everything else I did in life. You and I talk about this. We call it not work-life balance, work-life harmony, right? And in that harmony, if I'm out to dinner, I'm still working. If I'm talking to somebody, if I'm friends with somebody, it's probably somebody I'm working with. In fact, one of my best friends at the time was my lender. I learned how to integrate everything I could into real estate. And I think this is something, whether it was martial arts or boxing or music and everything I did, I always saw myself as a student, a constant student, never the master. I was a student. And I approach real estate that way. In fact, I still do today. It's never that I know it all. In fact, I don't feel like I know, like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. I'm constantly learning. And I approach real estate that way. And I think that's why from a very, very early on in my career, I kept growing in success, right? Well, right before you and I partnered, in fact, Joe Benson, the guy I mentioned, I met with him right before you and I partnered into ownership. At the time of that year, I was doing 75-ish or so transactions a year. I call it a solo agent. So, basically it was me and Jessica. And Jessica was helping with the paperwork and showed a couple houses here and there, but not super active. I was dying, just overrun with, like, you remember back in the day that we didn't think about efficiency. We didn't know how to do this. We didn't think about efficiency. We didn't think about best practices. All we thought about is, I got deals going. I got to go after it. I was working 12, 13-hour days, exhausting myself. Well, you and I talked about, hey, what are we going to do here? We decided to do the brokerage, right? Nobody knows this, but my motivation to do that, I just wanted to do less transactions, get some of my life back. I thought it'd be easier. Maybe I could pay a few bills with this brokerage thing. That's all I thought about. I wasn't thinking about being, in the top 100 companies in the country, or I just wanted to breathe a little bit. That was the farthest I think about. So I met with Joe every once in a while, like every few years, I'd run into him or meet with him. And I was telling him, he's looking at my numbers. He's like, you're doing incredible. At the time, you were, I think, number 5 to 10 because of your REO. You're like in the state for number of transactions, per agent. 18,500 agents at the time. You were in the top 10. I was number 33 as a solo agent. And when you take REO, because not that it's unfair, you had a corporate seller that's handing you a bunch of business, right? But you take that out and teams out, and I was number 12 in the state, 33 overall. So Joe looks at me and says, you're ramping up. Like the last 3 years, I was going from 50 and then 60 and then 75 transactions a year. You're ramping up. You're still growing. You're not even close to being done. Are you sure you want to transition? Like you're just getting started. And that paused me for a second. I thought, you're kind of right. Do I really want to do this? And it gave me pause. I almost didn't do it. But then I decided I need to get a car payment and a house payment without, running myself ragged. I'll do this easy brokerage thing. That'll be super easy, I thought, But that's, man, you asked me that question 20 minutes ago, how you got in real estate. That's a long answer.
Right.
But that's sort of the background, how it all happened, you know? Well, it's a long answer.
Well, hey, no, that was good, though. Thanks for sharing that. But I will say this. You are a great example of it doesn't matter where you came from or what you had, because it doesn't matter, right? We can't control our environment, the family we were born in, our background, our status in life, wherever it was, but we can control what we do going forward. So you're a great example for this show that you're doing, the American Dream. You live it, called the American Reality. You made your dream into reality. So, it's all the stuff that you've done to get to where you are, because people see you now as a co-owner, co-CEO of multiple businesses, the largest independently owned in Minnesota, all these other accolades we share, but they don't know the hard work and the sacrifice we've gone through. We joke about this. My hair's gotten gray now. You lost some hair.
I got the white in the beard now.
I know, right? We all sacrifice a lot of stuff, our personal life, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's because of our why. We do this because we had purpose. You said passion. Yeah. So I want you to really kind of share with your why, your purpose, because you went from. I know maybe you will, or you're comfortable going sharing, but you went some pretty tough time.
I did.
Well, you were in dark places. But somehow you got out, you survived, and you made this mind switch decision. At the end of the day, it's all about the mindset, right, Mike? So I'm going to push you a little bit to maybe share that a little bit, because. You're not where you are today. Where you came from, you shouldn't even be here. No. But you made some decision, and maybe you can share that.
First off, the why, and why real estate, right? Because I hear a lot of real estate agents go, I started real estate because I like to help people, which is the most watered down generic answer. It's way deeper than that. But I'll never forget this too. When I got that license and things started ramping up for me, right? At the time, I had both of my parents. In fact, my mom and dad, the house I grew up in, I think was my third transaction of my career. They were both retired. They wanted to move up north. So I sold the family house, which is sad. I was like, I the only house I ever lived in, right? Sold that thing. They moved to Brainerd, which ironically now we have an office up in Brainerd, right? It's actually Baxter, where our office is. So get them up there. They were happier than they've ever been for 5 months. I get a call from my mom. I was supposed to go up that weekend to see him. She said, hey, I want to warn you on something. I think I have cancer. And, you hear that word. And she was, I want to say 55 at the time. I think I have cancer. She had a throat cancer. She had a lump on her neck. So she could have hit it. Like if I went up there, because it was a few weeks since I saw her. If I went up there, it was like a golf ball hanging off there, right? So she had to warn me. This is not a woman that goes to doctors. Like you have to drag her in, that old school type of person. So, of course, when you hear that, automatically you go, well, okay, we don't know enough yet. And what's the treatment and what's the prognosis? And, you automatically go, where's the positive, right? You don't want to think about the worst. So I go up there, visit her. I mean, it freaks me out and I see everything and I'm like, yeah, it's freaky. But when we bring you down to the cities and we got her into the U of M or wherever it was. And I'll never forget when she walked out of that appointment, I saw it in her face, terminal. They told her, they did all the diagnostic and that was what they're going to share. And I saw her face when she walked out. That wasn't good news. And she sat down in the passenger seat and told me, and it hit me at that moment that, wow, she's not going to survive this. Now, ironically, right before, this is how things happen, like roller coasters, right? That you're up and down. Talk about mindset. Right before she gave me that notice of, I've got cancer, I bought my first house. Jessica and I did. And again, this is coming from a place I never really thought about owning a home. My work ethic sucked up to real estate. Like I thought I'd be renting some cheap apartment I never even thought about it. Never really even thought about it. But all of a sudden, it was all because we were getting older and Jessica's like, we didn't have our own place. We're living at home. I'm like, well, I sell real estate. Do we want to go rent? Then let's see if we can buy. At the time, if you remember back in the early 2000s, down payments were getting lower. There was all these, down payment assistance programs and it was getting pretty dang easy to buy a house. So we found this place, less than $100,000. Bought it. My dad came over. Both my parents came over, and we laid carpet ourselves. I put the roof on the thing myself. Actually, before closing, it was a condition of closing. Talk about not letting go of something, right? We're not going to close this loan until there's a new roof on. And the seller said, I'm not going to do it. So I'll do it. Before closing, went up there and put my own roof. And by the way, how many roofs I put on my life? That was my first one, and only. So me and my buddy did that. The roof looked like crap, but it passed the appraisal, right? Get that house. My first night in there, I laid awake. And it dawned on me, I own a home. The guy that sucks at life owns a home. And between that, my real estate license, that first transaction where that lady was like, I can't believe you did this for me. And now I own a home. It changed everything in my life. My trajectory of my life, I would have been dead before I was 30, the way I was going, right? But all of a sudden, I have this feeling of success, of hope, possibility. And I didn't know at the time what the American dream was or how it applied to my situation. I do now. But that American dream really, when you look back in the history of it, it really kind of was coined and started around, post-World War II and, people going from inner city factory jobs to like, hey, I want a bigger piece of the pie. I'm going to come back, move in the country, get bigger land, bigger houses, create maybe some generational wealth. It changed their outcome in life. And here I am with the outcome of my life being changed in one purchase, one signing. And I can't explain exactly what that did for me or how, but what I can explain is what it changed for me. Now, because you can kind of say to any person, if you say, I'm going to earn 60 grand a year, you know what you're going to do? You're going to earn 60 grand a year, right? You're going to limit yourself and your potential based on your own mindset. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a limited or scarcity mindset. I thought in that moment anything was possible. And when you see our agents, and I said earlier about empowerment, you see our agents talk about, I like to help people. Well, it's deeper than that. these people have their hopes and dreams that they're not even necessarily aware of, right? To them, it's like a family home. Again, the white picket fence, 2.2 kids. But you know how many people in that we've worked with, you know, us, you, me, our agents, that they didn't just buy that you know, white picket fence and 2.2 kids in that American dream. They got now their second home, their vacation home, maybe a couple rental properties. They're creating wealth through real estate. Changes people's lives. 90% of the wealth in this country is based on real estate. It's not just about wealth. It's about, you know, and you know this as well as I do. If you look at the stats of homeownership versus, you know, renters, it's not even close in terms of wealth. You know, marriage rates, lower divorce rates, you know, crime rates, all different. There's just something about having your own piece of that pie that changes you, you know, that changes your possibilities. And for me, it happened in a night, one day. Signed the paper, laid the carpet, and would lay down, looked at the ceiling, everything changed. It's weird to say that, but that's actually what happened, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, right now, that's something that's happening in life, right? We can't control what's happening because it's always going to happen. I don't care if it's COVID, the market, things are always happening. Right now, we're going through in our real estate industry some changes in the way we conduct as real estate professional. There are a lot of real estate professionals who are listening right now are struggling and feeling like they're lost. They don't know what's going to happen, the uncertainty. You went through all of these hard times. So what would you give advice to someone who's just feeling lost and hopeless right now? You know, what they should do?
So, you know, as I mentioned, bought the house. My mom gets cancer. She dies a few months later, right? And like one of those other tragic stories, my dad, who lost his first wife, had the crazy second one. Now has another one die. He followed suit 9 months later. You know, so I didn't lose one, but I had to bury two parents in a year. And
what do you mean he followed suit?
Died too. Like, right, you know, that happens a lot in older couples.
Yep.
You know, one goes and the other one goes. I mean, whoever knows why, but he died, and that was unexpected. That was one that, you know, we knew was going to happen. With him, I really didn't. So anyway, you know, you have to bury not one but two parents, all while planning a wedding, you know, ramping up a career. And that's when the dark times for me did hit. So we talk about hopelessness, I can tell you. Growing up in that poor family, in a neighborhood of people that were more affluent, right? I shouldn't say my neighbor, but my town, like my school, you know? And I grew up, when I was born into that family of, you know, the dysfunctional kids and the whole bit. Well, I was also born premature. I shouldn't say premature, but preemie weight. I was barely 5 pounds, 5 ounces. I spent my first birthday in the hospital in an oxygen tent. I had health problems all through. I just was riddled with health problems all through my early adolescence. And beyond that, a lot of social problems. I didn't develop well with, I had, you know, brothers and sisters that had their own adjustment issues and their own, you know, my family was not a happy family. We'll put it that way, you know? So here's me, young, socially awkward, going to now starting school and not faring well with the kids, you know? So I ended up finding myself on the wrong side of the bullied, you know, the bully or bullied, wrong side of that spectrum. And not a little bit, like it started young, but as I got older, it got worse and worse and worse. And for me, I got more isolated, you know, and when that happens to you, one of the two things happen. Either you get pretty violent and fight back, or you start isolating. And I isolated early on. I had a few close friends like me that were picked on and bullied. But when I say bullied, I'm not talking about name calling. From the earliest of ages I can remember, it was straight beatings. Like I had to worry about where I was going to get, like where I'm walking home and if I'm going to get beat today. It was on a daily basis. It wasn't by one person. It was groups a lot of times. And, you know, the thing is about pride and, you know, mindset again, I didn't want to tell anybody. So I've got not one, but two parents that are pretty heavy drinkers, very alcoholic. I'd say my mom was probably undiagnosed with some really severe mental health problems, mood disorders. You know, so I came from a household of instability. And all of a sudden I'm finding myself in school having instability. I didn't feel like I had a safe place one way or the other and for a lot of years. So I kept to myself, kept the beatings to myself. And as I got older, I started meeting people that, you know, were like me, that we kind of band together. And as I got even older, getting into like middle school, high school, then something flipped. And I'll never forget this. I was walking home from school one day, and again, I was getting suspended constantly and thrown in, getting in trouble because I would have to leave school early, 5-10 minutes early.
Because you wanted to get out before someone.
And I had places I'd hide or routes home that I knew that I could probably make it, right? But I had to leave early, and the teachers were ruthless about it. They didn't care what the excuse was, and they wanted, like, I don't care if you have a bullying problem, tell somebody about it. It's not my issue. Just, you can't leave early, right? Detention again, which made me feel even worse about myself, you know? But I don't know if it's how it is now, but back in those days, it was sort of the popular kids. It's like, boys will be boys, you know? It's your problem. Nobody really stuck up for anybody. Not in my school anyway. You know, not teachers or admin. So I was walking home one day with me and a buddy. I was 14 years old, and a group of guys jump out of a car. There's probably 50 people walking home. It's almost the last day of school for the year. No, sorry, it was newer in the school year, still warm. That's what it was. I had a t-shirt on, shorts, and these guys pile out of a car and just came at us. There's 50 other people, but I was the target, right? In that moment, again, you have these moments in your life that stick with you, but feeling that, why me as a target when all these other kids are here? You know, what's wrong with me? So the next day, I went to a martial arts school. I'm like, I've got to start learning how to fight back, defend myself. This is happening all the time, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I went to a Taekwondo class that was in my hometown, White Bear Lake. Started training in Taekwondo, and this goes back to being a constant student. I worked on perfecting that craft as much as I could. And by the end of that school year, I was fighting back, you know, and I was winning. Not often. It wasn't like I was fighting every day, but I started fighting back 2 or 3 times that year. I'd find myself in a physical confrontation holding my own, which gave me a sense of, well, you know, survival and pride and dignity. You know, that's what I was lacking. I didn't have dignity, right? Up to that point. So going into the next couple of school years, I was always battling that, you know, popularity versus, you know, bullied kid and fighting back. But the more you fight back, now you get other people see them, they want to challenge you. And I was a small kid too. I was not a big kid. I graduated high school at 145 pounds, but I had friends that were big, which helped, right? So getting past high school and having all that, you know, all that anger. And when I hit 21, 22, when I started selling real estate, and I was still doing martial arts, I was competing in martial arts. I was boxing. I just started kind of boxing at the time too. I lose both parents. And it's like a light switch went on. Excuse me. Like the furnace was lit. And the anger from all those years came out. And when I say I was working out at the time, I was bench pressing 415 pounds. I was squatting 550. I was way bigger and heavier than I am now, not fat. You know, I was a tank. I started working bar security, and that did not go very well because I was injuring people.
Well, you're having opportunities to get into those.
Yeah. I even tracked down a few of the people from my past, even the score. But I will tell you this, between bars, nightclubs, just on the street, I never started anything. That was always my thing, integrity, right? Like, I was never going to go out there and pick on somebody else. I've been through that. But the moment someone did it to me, there was no talking about it. You know, it was on. And from the age, 22, 23 to about 29, I was in more than 100 street fights in that time, more than 100. And I hurt a lot of people, I mean, it wasn't pretty, it was violent. But that anger, I couldn't get rid of it. So when the market crashed, real estate market crashed, and keep in mind, at the time I was working in real estate, I was doing well in my early 20s, 40 transactions or so a year, 250 grand, which you don't want to give 250 grand to an undisciplined kid with anger problems. So Jado Hark, who's one of our agents, I always tease him. I said, yeah, because he owned Aqua nightclub. I'm like, I gave all my commissions to you. Now you're working for us, right? So it's sort of a cycle. But I end up staying out late almost every single night. I was married, putting pressure on that marriage. I was gone all the time. All I wanted to do was go out and hang with my friends, and I was fighting and, bar hopping and doing all the wrong things, but still selling real estate at a pretty high level. Well, the market crashed in 2008. And prior to that, 2007, I think the market actually crashed prior to that because everything changed. Like The sale prices didn't dramatically drop, but the market changed dramatically. Things weren't selling. So I decided I had a great idea. Jessica and I sat down. I said, why don't we get out of Minnesota? If the market's going to be crap here, why don't we move to a place like California where the sale prices are 3 times higher? To be honest with you, I just wanted to move to California, like get a change, do something different. So we did, moved to San Diego. And again, the violent history. I was walking down the street one night and 3 guys came out of nowhere. And one of them said, "That's the guy." I said, "I don't know who you are." Wrong guy. He grabbed me. Well, the second he grabbed me, I hit him. I broke my wrist. I still got the scar. There's 2 pins in there. Well, I got to deal with him and 2 of his buddies with a broken wrist. That was a violent confrontation. And at the end of it, all 3 of them ran, but I was chipped elbow, broken wrist, busted up ribs. I mean, I was pretty hurt. As soon as that wrist healed, there was a boxing gym on the corner. So I've messed around with boxing in the past, but I was mostly martial arts. I went to that boxing gym as soon as I healed, and I don't know what happened. Like the market was slower. I wasn't selling real estate at the same level. But the cool thing out there, I was selling real estate in places like Hollywood. Kind of cool to write that on a purchase agreement. But I find myself getting so invested in boxing. And I think it was the anger. I needed a place to channel that.
Your release.
Yeah. And I never went in there thinking I was going to go and compete. I just wanted to get in there and hit a bag and get some of it out. But I fell in love with it. And next thing I know, I agreed to take what they call a smoker bout. It's like an unofficial, non-sanctioned bout. And I did it, and I won. I mean, you don't have official winners in smoker bouts, but I did. I won. And Jessica, too, she was actually boxing right alongside with me. And a little plug for her, she retired undefeated, winning the Ringside World Tournament as an amateur. Impressive fighter back in the day. But I find myself now competing and trying to sell real estate at the same time out there in the broken market, And I found this was a struggle for me, is splitting my time and focus. The good news was I didn't get in any fights. Like I was channeling all that for the boxing gym. And I had trouble though splitting my focus. If I was fighting and competing, that's all I could think about. I couldn't think about a buyer and seller, and I was throwing punches in my sleep. I mean that, like really waking myself up, throwing punches in my sleep. That's how much focus it took. So eventually in 2012, I moved back in 2010, but I was boxing here still. I had to make a decision because my real estate career was really ramping up again. So I went from that 40 transactions a year before the crash. Now I moved back. That's when I started partnering with you. Now I'm back up again, 40. Actually, I think 36 was my highest year prior to the crash. Then my first year with you, I had 43 deals, 43 transactions. And I went, holy cow, I'm actually doing more now than I did before. So I hung the boxing up. I'm like, I can't do both. That was a hard decision to make, by the way, because I was getting good and I probably could have made a real career at it. But I thought at my age, and you don't really make money until you're ranked in the top, 10 or so as a pro, whatever that number is. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with this real estate thing because this is going really well. It's a sure thing. So I started working in that. But the good news was, whatever that I had inside of me that was driving those dark places, I don't even want to admit to how bad some of these conflicts were and how violent. It was bad. Come home with different people's blood on me twice a week. Well, I left all that in the boxing ring. I never had that problem after that. I grew out of that. I didn't want to hurt anybody. But I tell you, what I learned from boxing is what helped me go to the next level in real estate. What I learned was it's all about consistency, right? We talk about this in real estate all the time. As an athlete, it's these little things you do over and over, fundamentals, habits. You don't show up to the gym whenever you feel like it and stay to whenever you feel like it. You're on a program. You're set, right? And you look at what you're practicing. It's not fun. It's these fundamentals that you get to be muscle memory. Your eyes get sharp. You see punches coming at you before you even are thrown. You know what's going to happen. So I started thinking, well, and one of my favorite lessons from boxing, you can't panic. I mean, think about it. You're in a corner and they're throwing everything they got at you, trying to knock you out. If you panic, you're dead. A life lesson I learned from that is how to breathe through what's coming at me, how to slow it down, breathe through it, keep my eyes open, keep calm in a world that was not calm. because real estate's not calm at all. I mean, real estate is just hair's on fire. Everything's reactive, right? But whether it's, a car coming at you from oncoming traffic, or somebody threatening you, or bills you can't pay, panic kills you in those situations. You can't think straight. But learning to slow it down and see the punches coming in life was probably the most important lesson I learned in that entire venture. And I think that's what really helped me scale up, where I thought, okay, I'm overwhelmed. How do I take that lesson and just slow it down and figure out where the pieces should go? Because I watch people get overwhelmed and they just get shut down in this industry. I've seen so many people quit due to stress and anxiety because they can't slow it down. They can't see the punches coming. That was one of the things that I think early on, coming back into real estate after boxing, coming back and working here in Minnesota, working with you, was how I was able to kind of get my business up there. And I'll give a plug for Club Wealth. We started working with Club Wealth, 2015 or 16 or whatever that was. Here's me, number 33 agent in the state, go to this mastermind event with people I never met before. And quite frankly, Michael Hellickson, if you're listening to this, I thought he was like a used car salesman when I first met him. He's just a slick sales guy. And I thought, what is this, right? But then all of a sudden, the guys around the table start talking about their business and what they're doing. You were there with me. And I'm like, they're talking so much over my head. They're talking about things I've never even thought about before. Doing huge things in real estate because it was national. It wasn't our little bubble. This was national. Biggest agents in the country, some of them, right? And like boxing, I walked out of there because the first time I jumped in a boxing ring to actually spar, they stopped me with a guy that was ranked number 3 in his weight class nationally. Little deal, 154 pounds. I'll never forget it. So he threw a hook at me. And I don't know how I did it, but I rolled under it. He was surprised, right? And I'm like, whew, that was a good move. Well, 2 seconds later, he made sure that didn't happen again because he put me down with a body shot. I still feel to this day. I can still feel that liver shot. But I was on my can from that. I rolled out of the ring. But I had to come back the next day. Like, this is the test of valor, right? I knew that I had to come back the next day. And am I going to avoid coming back and quit? Or do I go face this adversity again? Because I knew it was coming. Well, I show up the next day, forced myself to go in. He wasn't there. And this went on for like 3-4 months. And if he was there, I'd never end up in the ring with him again. But I was sparring with other people. 6 months later, I finally get back in the ring with him. Now I can hold my own. It was a different experience, right? I even did pay him back. I think we get to be really good friends. I think it was about a year into my boxing venture. I paid him back. I rolled him out of the ring. I'm like, even now. But there's a lesson in that, right? I mean, you don't quit just because something is hard. You keep working on it and keep tweaking it. And that's another lesson that you learn from one thing into real estate, right? Well, I go to this event and these huge agents are there doing these huge things. I'll never forget, I said to you, I'm like, I'm the dumbest guy in this room right now. I don't ever want to come back in this room and feel this way again. 6 months later.
I think that's I know you a long time. That's one of the moments you barely said a word.
I didn't say a word. Yep. And that I was so out of my depth, right? But you remember the next time that we went back.
You ran the whole show.
I wouldn't shut up, right? So at the first you're like, Long, this is the partner you've been talking about that you thought we should meet? You sure this is the guy you want to partner with? 6 months later, they're like, Jesus, Long, this guy won't shut up. But that's what inspired me.
Yeah.
For me, and I think you're the same way, you want to gravitate towards greatness. You don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. You want to be the dumbest guy in the room. Because if you're not the dumbest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yep.
That was the first time I felt that way. And I was insecure about it then. Now I look for it. I seek that out. I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. That was a good lesson there. But, for me, in combination with the adversity I faced in the boxing ring, the adversity I faced with the bullying in school, the luck of, the universe hates me. I'm getting picked on. I lose my parents early. Nobody likes me. Nothing works out for me. Me, poor me, poor me, poor me. At some point you go, am I really a victim here? Is this being done to me or is it being done for me? Because either that fire is going to refine you or it's going to melt you, right? And I had to make that decision. Am I going to be refined or melted? And it is a choice. It is a decision. It doesn't just happen. It kind of comes from the makeup of who you are. Or it's what shapes you from weak to strong, that decision. It's not easy. But you and I watch real estate agents go through this all the time where they go through some adversity and, hey, it looks like you had a bad year last year. Well, this thing happened in my life. I said, yeah, I get it. I buried not one, but two people in a year. I've been divorced, and through the middle of that divorce, still had to hold up a company. And I understand that level of hurt. But when you have purpose, back to purpose, right? Why is purpose such a core value? If you're waiting for motivation in order to succeed, I got news for you. You're never going to succeed with motivation. Motivation is fleeting. It's like an emotion. I can be mad one minute, happy the next. It's a cousin of an emotion, I'd say, motivation, right? But purpose, habits, because purpose is going to build those habits, right? It's why you get in the boxing gym every single day at the same time. It's habits. And by the way, work ethic and habit will trump talent all day long. Another thing I learned in the boxing gym, I watch guys come in with all the natural talent in the world. I watched the next guy come in with none of it, right? But the natural talent guy would rely solely on his talent. I mean, yes, he worked out, he'd get himself better, but not like the work ethic guy. He knew he was up against it. He knew the only way to compete is to outwork everybody. See what happens over time? At first, talent guy got him all day long. Over time, work ethic catches up and surpasses every single time, right? So, I think about that and I'm like, that's what purpose, that purpose is what keeps you on your habits. If you're waiting for motivation, like so many agents are, it's why they're good for one day. 6 weeks later, they're finally good for another day. Like they feel it again, right? But habit's compulsive, meaning that if you don't do it, you feel like something's wrong. Good or bad compulsive. Like if it's a bad habit, I have to eat that ice cream when I watch TV, right? I've got to drink when I go out, for dinner. I have to have a drink, like compulsive. But what if your habits were good habits? What if it was pushing you to do the things that you're supposed to do to be successful? What if you had real purpose behind it? And for me, that American dream, what it did for me, what it changed my life in that moment of possibility and hope. I've seen so many homeowners and people I personally helped that have been through the same. There's just something about that, taking that step of homeownership. And that's what we're really selling here. It isn't brick and mortar. It's empowerment. It's purpose. And we do so with integrity. Not what's right for us, but what's right, period. That's the backbone of our entire company. And we couldn't, like I said, we couldn't have said that day one. We didn't start out and say, let's begin with the end in mind. We had no idea. But through our, process of self-discovery and, where we're going, I would say that's exactly where we're at.
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, we're already up to the hour, man. I mean, this has gone through really fast. So what I love that you said that we are our habits, right? We hear it all the time.
Yeah.
And if you don't like who you are, you change your habit.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually that simple,
It
right?
is. It is.
So let's wrap up with one last comment or advice from you of those who are listening, that how can they make their American dream a reality? What would you say to them?
Well, first off, I think, unlike us, try to have some definition of what that dream is, right? Like, what do you actually want to accomplish with this? If you're in real estate, for example, trying to figure out why real estate, don't just tell me you want to help people, it's got to be deeper than that. When you figure out why, for me, I wanted to reduplicate that moment where that woman said, I couldn't have done this without you. You impacted my life. That was the reason that I kept going on. It's actually the reason I do what I do today. Because what I love doing secretly, if you don't know this about me, my favorite thing of all the things I do is I love educating agents and helping them become better at what they do. And that doesn't happen from teaching them how to do real estate, by the way. It happens from teaching them about self-development, self-improvement. And it's one thing I'll ask an agent every single time, other than real estate, talk to me about the last thing you did that actually bettered yourself. Talk to me about how often you did that. Tell me the experience. When's the last time you did it this week? What was the outcome? And what I find is most people can't answer because they're not focused on self-development. They're focused on the end result. I want money.
Growth mindset versus fixed.
You can't skip the process, right? You have to go through the process. You can't jump to the end result. The results in the journey is about the journey, not the destination. And so many of us want to get to the destination. Man, as a constant student, I can tell you, journey. Focus on the journey because your story's not over. Never is until it's over.
Wow. Hey, man, that's awesome. Sorry I stole the way your host mic. I'll give it back to you now. I promise if you have me back, we can talk about my story. But I hope today everyone get to know you a little bit better because everyone's going, who's this goofy Mike guy? Long, you guys are like the odd couple. But that's why we work so well together because we both came from nothing and we fought through it all. And we struggle, and where we are today wasn't easy.
No.
You know, so I appreciate you telling your story. I know you don't like to talk a lot about yourself, so I kind of, flipped the script on you today and put you in a different seat, and I took over the host there. But I'll give it back the host to you, man. Let you wrap it up.
Right. Well, I guess, like when we do these segments or these broadcasts, what I want to impart on you guys or leave you guys with is there's never going to be a moment in your life when things are easy if you're doing it right. There is no easy button. Nothing worth it has ever been easy. So don't try to figure out how to get away from the pain. Lean into the hard, lean into hard. And when you have that purpose, when it's driven by something bigger than yourself, whether that's your family, legacy, whatever it is, identify what that is, what that's going to drive you, and lean into the hard. So many of us in this industry, and this is a wonderful thing to save my life. And I didn't even talk about how close I was to losing my life more than once. But there is no easy button, and the more you try to avoid the hard, you're missing the point. Go through it, build your resilience, build your skill set, be refined by fire, lean into it, be grateful for the hard. Because when you can get through that, and when you can handle that challenge, you'll bust through your ceiling, both in what you're capable of, what you're capable of enduring, but more than anything, what your outcome is, like the actual result that it produces. That's where the magic is. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us. We'll be back next month with another episode with another guest. Catch you on the next one.
Thank you.